Welcome to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. CenturyMartialArts.com for everything that is martial arts.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Label. I'm JD.
I'm Charlie Murphy.
And Charlie, we're joined today by Shelia O'Brien. And Sheila is the chairperson for HowAssistance Dogs International North America. Welcome, Sheila.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And so when I found you, I said I've got to get a hold of them and have them on. And I've always been sort of intrigued with the therapy dog aspect of things and things like that, but I never really sort of, dug any deeper than that. I don't know, Charlie, do you know anything about, service dogs, therapy dogs? Are you an expert?
I have no knowledge.
None at all?
Regarding any of it.
Okay.
So this is going to be all brand new and a learning experience for me. I'm pretty excited about it. It's, I'm pretty fascinated by it. I've seen, like canine police dogs in action and seen the training process and some of the stuff that they do. And I've been completely amazed with their abilities. And, I see a non-sighted person walking with a dog, and it amazes me because I have seen them where they get to a street, they get to the corner, and the dog will it knows that it stops, and it stops the person from walking any further. And just, the whole thing just is pretty fascinating. So thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you.
So, Sheila, before we get started, I guess we should probably mention our sponsor, huh, Charlie?
Yeah, the program is sponsored by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. Thank you so much to those folks. We're here with Shelia O'Brien, the chair for HowAssistance Dogs International North America, the global authority in the assistance dogs industry. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with everything.
Oh, wow. Well, believe it or not, when I graduated from high school way back when, it was very difficult for women to become veterinarians. I really wanted to be a veterinarian when I grew up, but that was not meant to be. So I went into special education, and I had some children that were deaf in my resource room. So I learned how to sign. I use sign language with these kiddos, and I still continued to love animals. I lived on a farm. I had dogs, cats, horses, ponies, goats, and I read an article way back in 1978 about this program that was trying to prove that dogs could be the ears for people who were deaf, just like guide dogs had become the eyes for those who were blind. So I called them right away. This was happening at a college in Massachusetts, and I live in Massachusetts. So I called them right away, and I volunteered my services because they had two trainers that could train dogs to do anything, but they couldn't communicate with the people they were hoping to serve. So I got involved in 1978. I'll be celebrating my 43rd year of assistance dog work in this October. And I left teaching, never looked back. Went to the dogs, I guess.
Nice. Are you still in Massachusetts?
Well, yes and no. I have 1 foot in Massachusetts. I have a house in Massachusetts. And right here, I'm in Massachusetts as we speak. This is my studio apartment there in the cellar of this house. But I also have an apartment on Long Island because that's where the program that I work for is located, in Smithtown, Long Island. Okay. I'm a special advisor to both the Guide Dog Foundation and its sister organization, America's Vet Dogs. In addition to that, I have the honor of serving as the chair of Assistance Dogs International. And that includes 79 accredited programs that train service dogs throughout the United States and Canada, and 20 programs that are candidate programs that are working towards accreditation. So it's been an honor, a labor of love all these years.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's great, Sheila. I guess I told you in the email when I introduced myself, but when I was 10, I had wanted a puppy, and my parents, they're pretty old fashioned, and they're like, all right, if you want this puppy, then you're gonna have to raise the money for the puppy. You're gonna have to have money for the food, the vet bills, etc., etc. And I worked and worked and worked and saved literally every penny until I got $200 worth of pennies and was able to go and buy my Sheltie. But from there, I'd watched Lassie like in reruns, right? And was just fascinated with what the dog could do. And so when it came time to name my dog, it was like, well, what's the name going to be? I was like, well, it's going to be Champ because I know, that he's going to be pretty smart and whatever. And so he was like super duper smart. We took him to obedience classes, and he, they quickly advanced him up into the advanced classes. And so long story short, we ended up doing dog shows with him. And so I understand the dedication and all of that goes into training a dog, but I believe service dogs and therapy dogs. I mean, that's like major league next level kind of stuff. And so one of the questions that I always had was, how do you choose a puppy from a litter and say, yeah, this one's going to be a service dog, because we know that it's kind of tough to tell at that stage, exactly what you're working with. So how is that determined?
Well, it's difficult because puppies, have not fully matured when they're babies like that. And, there's a lot of human interaction that can guide this puppy towards service dog work. But there's also his DNA or her DNA. So it's difficult. You can't really choose. Sometimes things are obvious, like if you have a puppy that's really, really shy, for whatever reason, just his personality, it's probably not the right dog to become a service dog or a guide dog. If you have a puppy that's too energetic, that's, like attention deficit and too energetic, it's probably not the right job to have that puppy become a service dog, a hearing dog, or a guide dog. He might make a great drug dog. So they tell us, we don't choose them. They tell us over the course of their training time what they want to be when they grow up.
So how does that process start for you guys? I mean, do you get in contact with breeders? Like, do you have a directory of breeders that you specifically work with? Well, how does that process work?
Some programs do, but our particular program started as a guide dog organization in 1946. So they've always had a breeding program. And then in 2006, 2007, they expanded their program and actually developed a sister program, America's Vet Dogs, which trains service dogs for wounded veterans. So we've always had a breeding program, and we breed about 300 puppies a year. And the puppies go in different directions. Some of our puppies go to be service dogs. And what happens is at 8 weeks of age, if they're going to be a service dog, we ship them off to prisons where inmates raise them until they're 18 months of age. If we feel the puppy has more aptitude to be a guide dog, Then we place them in full-time foster homes. So it just depends. And along the way, they tell us what they want to be when they grow up.
Now, have you come to find that the certain breeds are better for certain things? Like you see a lot of the canines that I mentioned earlier, that a lot of those seem to be German Shepherds. I
Mhm.
don't know if German Shepherds make better cops and Golden Retrievers make better seeing eye dogs, or is there certain breeds that are more apt to fall into these roles?
Yeah, as chair of the industry, I can get a lot of information from a lot of programs that do this. And really, probably the best service dog or guide dog is a Labrador Retriever. Also, some Golden Retrievers are very, very good, but a Lab is more gregarious than a Golden. Sometimes Goldens can be a little too laid back.
Okay.
So I'd say a Lab, a Golden. Also, some programs, such as our program, sometimes we do a mix of the two. We do a Lab, a Golden Lab, or a Lab Golden, and they have the highest success rate when all is said and done. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't ever see a Chihuahua guide dog. It's just you.
No, but you might see a Chihuahua hearing dog, because
Oh.
hearing dogs trained for people who are deaf tend to be high energy, very sound aware, and they don't have to be large. Whereas a service dog, for the most part, has to be large, because
Sure, you want to
if they're
feel that.
helping with the physical traits, if they're keeping up with a wheelchair, if they're providing balance for someone who has limited mobility of their legs, if they're with an amputee who doesn't have an arm, they have to jump up on a counter. So they really do things. You need a little bit of size there
Okay.
for a service dog. Also, you need a little bit of size for a guide dog, because they're walking, they put in a lot of miles. They have
Sure.
to be a certain height
So that
so
you can
that the
feel them on your
person
leg
can
or
easily
next to you.
handle it.
Right.
They do have handles on their harnesses, as you know, the guide dog handle, U-shaped handle. But if you have a really tiny Lab, like a 40-pound Lab, you're going to be hard pressed to find, a match for that dog. They're just too small. However, a really tiny, tiny Lab or a Chihuahua, if it has the right temperament and the right stuff, they can make great hearing dogs.
Interesting.
And so primarily, when we think of service dogs and guide dogs and things, so primarily, we think of as a society, we think of folks that are either blind or deaf. But what are some other disabilities that a service dog might be used for that we might not even think about?
Well, this is what I find so fascinating and exciting. The very first nationally recognized guide dog in this country was in the 1920s, and it was a German Shepherd named Buddy. And he came over from Switzerland with a blind man whose name was Morris Frank. And they actually were the very first nationally recognized guide dogs. They came back from Europe. They went to Europe to get this dog, came back on a boat, landed in New York, where they met with a throng of photographers and media. This was the big deal. And that dog, Buddy, just wowed everybody when he led his handler, Morris Frank, through the crazy streets of New York. And that was in the late 20s. Hearing dogs, for people who were deaf, didn't come on the scene till about 1969. Very first nationally recognized hearing dog was another shepherd named Skippy. And he was trained to help an 11-year-old girl. And the very first service dog to help someone who was physically disabled came on board in 1975. And it was a Lab Golden mix named Abdul, which means human servant of humans or human servant, something like that. And he worked with a woman, Carrie Klaus, who used a wheelchair. So those were the very first nationally recognized dogs in our country. And it wasn't that long ago. 1975 was not that long ago, if you're as old as me. However, since that time, I'm always amazed at what dogs can do and how they can be applied to other situations. After the guide, the hearing, and the service dog came on the scene, we started to see them being used in other ways, like they've been used to help autistic children. We have service dogs for autism, where if an autistic children is light gazing or having some anxious activities or repetitive activities, the dog can come over and nudge them. He'll take a cue from the child. He can also be led by the parent, but with the child holding onto a harness, so that if that child bolts, the dog goes into a downstay, the kid's hanging on, and it gives the mom and the dad time to not let the child, through his impulses, get harmed in any way. So there's a lot service dogs for autism can do as well. They also can put pressure on the children. You know, autistic children as a rule, all children as a rule actually, but more so with autistic children, they don't sleep well. They have a hard time sleeping. You get them a service dog who puts pressure on them, like a pressure blanket at night, they sleep through the night. So it's a gift. It's really a gift. So after that, and that first service dog for autism was introduced in Canada. I can't remember the name of the program. You'll have to excuse me for that, but it was introduced in probably the 80s. I'm not 100% sure on that, but after the others. Then a program in California started training dogs to detect high and low blood sugar, diabetic alert and alert dogs. And that is a scent discrimination skill. They can actually smell the, the high blood sugar or the low blood sugar, and they can alert their partner to this. They can be small too. Diabetic alert dogs do not have to be big. You know, a lot of them are shelter rescue, as are hearing dogs. A lot of hearing dogs are shelter rescues. Most of the service dogs, however, there are some shelter rescues, but some of the service dogs, most of the service dogs are labs. Excuse me.
All right.
It's all right.
Okay. They didn't stop there. Like if you have tachycardia, there are some dogs that can actually respond to that and let the person know that they're, if they don't realize it first, but they can actually alert to that. So that's another thing. And finally, and I'm very, very proud of this because I was deeply involved in this, when the young men and young women came home from Iraq and Afghanistan in about 2005, they were coming back with severe, severe wounds. Amputations, spinal cord injuries were up 27%, back injuries, traumatic brain injury. And so the industry, and again, I was working as a trainer at that time. Well, no, I was working running a program, but at that time, we were preparing for these 50,000 young people who were in their 20s at the time to come back and completely change the demographics of the disabled population in this country. And sure enough, they did. So we were only thinking of their physical wounds. We're thinking that they had no legs, no arms, they couldn't walk, they were using wheelchairs. We were only thinking about that. So we were training service dogs to help them with their physical disabilities. And I had the honor of placing the very first service dog with a young man from Iraq who was Afghanistan, who was a bilateral amputee. It was the very first time, and that was in 2006. So as we started placing more and more of these dogs and other programs started placing more of these dogs, the veterans were telling us that yes, these tasks to help with their physical disabilities was great, but they were actually using those tasks to mitigate their PTSD. Now, we as an industry weren't even thinking of anything like PTSD.
Right.
It wasn't even on our radar. But, you know, I had one young man and he had lost an arm and he had nerve damage, he had traumatic injuries to his leg as well. So he had to use a crutch and he had no arm. So we trained the dog to retrieve that crutch. And one of the tasks we trained the dog to do was to turn the light switches on, because he was an avid reader. And, you know, he liked to read with the overhead light on in his bedroom at night. And he had to get up and get his crutch. And, you know, he had to do it was difficult for him to get up and turn the light off. So we taught the dog to turn the light off. So this man was one of the early veterans to get a dog. I'd say he was probably in the first 5 veterans in the country to get a service dog. So he was doing a lot of speaking for my organization that I was with at that time, you know, to let VFWs know and let people know. So he had a beautiful dog named Ruthie. I'll never forget this. And he was speaking before Westchester Dinner Theater. He was from Connecticut. My program was in Massachusetts at the time, and he was speaking in New York. But anyway, he gets up on stage, and I'm thinking he's going to talk about, oh my gosh, you know, it's very difficult for me to get out of bed once I'm in bed, and she turns the light on for me. And was my mindset. Well, what happened was he gets up on stage and he says, I was a sniper in Iraq. And he said, and because of that, I cannot go into a dark room because my PTSD is so severe. And I send Ruthie, my service dog, in to turn that light switch on, and then I can go into the dark room. So a light bulb went off in my head. And I kept hearing these stories that the veterans told us. They told us. I had another young man who said, you know, he had PTSD. He had other problems as well. But he said, you know, one of the worst things is that I have a big Ben alarm clock. These were the days, right? A big Ben alarm clock. And I'm on medications for my other problems. So I need something really loud to wake me up. But this Big Ben alarm clock, when it goes off, he says, I'm jolted awake. And a lot of times it triggers flashbacks or my PTSD. He says, can you help me? And so we said, yes, we're going to train a dog to do hearing dog work for you to mitigate that PTSD. I want you to get a clock radio. Again, I'm dating myself. Clock radio. This is before cell phones were all over the place, believe me. We want you to get a clock radio, and we want you to put it on a very soothing, soft station, very calm and quiet. Dogs can hear. I think it's like something like 17 times better than humans. I mean, they can hear much better than we can. So that dog was trained to nudge him awake when the clock radio went on. So again, more and more stories like that. So we started the first PTSD program in 2007 and placed the first service dog for PTSD in 2008. And I really feel right now that is going to be the service dog of the future right now, going forward. Yeah. Because our waiting list is very, very long. And again, we work with guide dogs and hearing dogs and seizure response dogs. We work with many, many types of dogs, but we're finding PTSD is the most important to these, at least veterans. Now, my program works only with veterans, so I only have that perspective. So it might be different at other programs. I don't think so, though. But they feel, and one said to me, I asked him, I said, your dog does so many things for you, but you only talked about your PTSD. And he said to me, I can handle my physical disabilities. They are what they are. But my PTSD is with me every minute of every day, and I can't handle it. So very interesting. So as an industry, I listened, and as an industry, we all listened. And so we created service dogs for PTSD. The very first standards for that particular service dog was ratified by Assistance Dog International on January 16th, 2018. To me, that's a day that will go down in infamy, because it was very difficult for an industry that had always dealt with physical disabilities to make that leap.
Sure. Yeah.
So, sorry the
Amazing.
story was
Fascinating.
so
No,
long, but
yeah.
you asked for it.
No,
That's great.
It's fascinating information. We're here with Sheila O'Brien, the chair for Assistance Dogs International North America, the global authority in the assistant dog industry. And you're listening to Beyond the Label. Sheila, we got to step aside just for a moment and some words from our sponsor. And we are sponsored by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. Back with Sheila here in just a moment. It's Beyond the Label.
Beyond the Label, presented by Century Martial Arts for everything that is martial arts. It's no secret, every martial artist, no matter their age, dreams of becoming a legend. Having their name listed among the greats like Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, and Jackie Chan. You can hide it or deny it, but you know it's true. Being a legend takes raw talent, dedication, big breaks, and an ability to survive a roller coaster called fame. But it also takes one more thing to go with it: the best gear and equipment in the world. From the company that is martial arts, Century Martial Arts. They aren't just another martial arts supplier that's never set foot on a mat. They are martial artists, and that means they know their products and use what they sell. From uniforms and training gear to weapons and equipment, Century has it all for every martial arts style. Although you may never be listed among the greats, you can still shop like one at CenturyMartialArts.com and unleash your legend within. Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. You're listening to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by Century Martial Arts. Check them out at CenturyMartialArts.com.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Label. I'm JD.
I'm Charlie Murphy.
And we're joined by Shelia O'Brien tonight. She is the chair of Assistance Dogs International of North America. Thanks for being with us here, Sheila. We've learned so much so far, but we still have a lot of questions for you, so hopefully you have time to hang in here with us.
Sure.
Well, Sheila, I was kind of curious. Let's say I've suffered a recent injury or debilitating something, whether it be my eyesight, whether it be my hearing, etc. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I want to try this. Maybe I want to go with a service animal to see if they can help me. How does one get a hold of you, and what is the process exactly? How do I go about putting this in motion?
Well, the best thing to do is really go on the website of Assistance Dog International. The website is www.assistancedogsinternational.org. You can do what's called a member search, and you can put certain filters in there. Like, first of all, you can search by region. And, most of the people that are listening to this probably live in the United States, so they would search the North American region. And then they would filter it more, like, say I needed a diabetic alert dog. Okay. Also, you can filter it by state if you wanted to at first start with a program closer to where you live. So you can put all those things together and you'll come up with a list of programs. And then you research each program individually on their website. I mean, it does take a little research, but it is well worth it. And what I want everyone to be sure of is that these are accredited programs by Assistance Dog International, ADI, and there's another accrediting organization for guide dogs, and that's called IGDF, International Guide Dog Federation. When you work with an accredited program, you are assured that these dogs are trained to the highest standards. You're also assured that these programs will have your back. Say you have future problems with your diabetic alert dog or whatever kind of service dog it is. That program, because they're accredited, they are responsible to help you overcome those problems. So it's very, very important. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot go to a trainer down the street, but you are not going to have the kind of standards in place that you will through these organizations.
Now you
ADI
said
and IGDF.
now you said there's 79 accredited members right now. Or is there one in every state in the U.S.?
No. I just happened to be doing a search in Nevada, and there's not a program located in Nevada. However, there are programs that work nationally. Every program is different. Like my program, America's Vet Dogs, and the Guide Dog Foundation, they're larger programs and they work nationally. So if somebody's in Nevada and they need a guide dog, we will fly them. We will train a dog for them and we will fly them to New York, where they'll reside at our dormitory for 2 weeks. They'll learn how to work as a team with that dog, and then we'll fly them back home. And we have field reps all around the country for America's Vet Dogs and the Guide Dog Foundation that do follow-up visits, troubleshoot if there is trouble. So, but that's one way. But there are other programs that only do a radius. There's a program in Pennsylvania that just got its 4th accreditation, a wonderful program. And they only do a 200-mile radius of where they're at. So if you live within 200 miles of their program, then they're the ones, they're one you want to apply for. But you really have to do the research. Sure. But it's all there for you. You go on the ADI website and you put in your filters and voila. So I also suggest that anybody who is interested in applying for a service dog, you do it. You just do it. You don't think about it forever, because there are long waiting lists, especially with COVID. There can be up to a 3-year waiting list now with COVID. Oh,
wow.
Because it set everyone back.
So that actually leads me into my next question, which sort of piggybacked off of Charlie's, and then you just sort of brought it up. So for me, I've dealt with cerebral palsy for 42 years now, so I've learned to adapt pretty well, and so everybody's like, well, have you ever thought of getting a service dog? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't want to take that away from somebody that needed it. I can manage, my needs aren't, that great. So what would you say to somebody like myself that probably could use some assistance from a dog, but maybe is doesn't want to take away from someone else?
It's very interesting because I hear that a lot from veterans. It's very interesting, but I tell them a service dog will bring a whole different dimension to your life that aids, adaptions can't bring to your life. And I say, do it. And I say, do it, don't wait for 3 years and then think you're going to get a dog like that. Do it now. I also say, don't put your eggs in one basket. There are 79 great programs across the country. Some may be close to you. Some may be, be national in scope. So apply to several.
Got another question. Just now, ideally, we're going to outlive these service animals. I
Mhm.
guess that's the hope. And how is that handled? So, for example, my pet that I've had that has helped me for the last 15 years. How does it all work?
Well, it depends on what your wishes are and what the program um, works out with you. Like most programs, not all, but most programs will talk to you about this early on. They'll talk to you about the passing of your dog, which is more likely, and how traumatic that is. And it is. Any animal in our, touches our lives, and it's traumatic. Their family. It tends to be a little bit worse, the service dog. But I say you have so much love to give, just go for it. Go for it. But anyway, so they'll talk to you about that. And they'll also talk to you about if you pass first, what are your wishes?
Right.
Now, some veterans, some people, not just veterans, but some people who have service dogs say, well, if the dog is young enough, I really want him to go back in service to help somebody else. Others will say, I have children. If I should go first, I would like the dog to stay in the family and become a family pet. And then, the program waves its magic wand and the dog's not a certified service dog anymore. It's a family pet. So it just depends on what you work out with the program. But again, an accredited program will discuss these things with you early on, probably before you go home with that dog.
Yeah. Okay.
So
it's your wishes. Your wishes can change over time, like all of us do. But yeah.
So a couple of questions, just about once you have your service dog and things are settled in, is what part of having that service dog is the owner responsible for? Are they able to choose their own vet, or do they have to see a vet that you guys recommend? How does that portion of it all work? Is it pretty much their dog at that point to do as if it was a pet, or how does all that work?
Well, first of all, again, programs have different approaches to this. Some programs retain ownership, and you retain, what do they call it? You retain the rights to utilize the dog, something like that. The program in Pennsylvania I just went to uses that. My program, if everything goes well, we hand over the ownership rights to you, okay? With our program, if you're a civilian getting a guide dog, you are responsible for the veterinary care and the food for your dog and the grooming, everything your dog needs. However, before you apply for that dog, you will see in the application how much it's going to cost you every month. Can you do it? You have to be able to assume the responsibility for the dog. Now, veterans, it's a little bit different because the VA does have a veterinary health insurance benefit policy for veterans.
Nice.
Right now, it's just for veterans with mobility issues, like physical, guide dogs, and hearing dogs. But we're in the process of working with the VA to extend that to service dogs for PTSD. And I think that will happen. And I'm hoping it happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So that's different. But yes, you can go to your vet. Even if a veteran does obtain these veterinary health insurance benefits, they can use this insurance card at their vet. Now, I'm not saying that programs don't have any responsibility. They train you and send you out the door and say, see ya. No. If you have an emergency and if you really can't afford the care the dog needs, the program will work something out with you. They'll either lend you the money to do it, They'll ask you to bring the dog back to our veterinarians. We have several wonderful valued veterinary partners. They give us discounts. I mean, the program will work things out with you. But yes, the dog becomes your responsibility, just like a pet dog.
Perfect, perfect. Can you speak a little bit, because I know this has been a sticky situation over the past few years, and I think Charlie and I have talked about it off the air. There's a lot of folks with well, let's say kind of obscure service animals sometimes, and so then it kind of muddies the water and clouds the waters a little bit. But what what are some general rules and things like that you're able to do with your service dog, and for people that are a little bit skeptical out there, like how do you tell the difference? Not that it's really any of your business as a as a just a patron, I guess. But how do you tell the difference between what's true and what's not?
What's real and what's fake.
That's right.
It's not difficult to tell the difference because it's common sense differences. If you and I'm working right now with the airlines who really got themselves in quite a mess because they were allowing what they called emotional support animals to fly.
Mm-hmm.
So they were seeing ducks and turkeys and pigs, and it was a mess. And it was very hard for those with legitimate service dogs to fly, you know. They were also seeing dogs that really weren't trained for public access because they were emotional support. Emotional support dogs really live in the home. They do provide support for someone who needs an animal, but they were never, ever meant to be out in public. They were never trained for that. And then you have other people that, because so many disabilities now are invisible, like your deafness, like diabetic alert dogs, like seizure response dogs, and PTSD dogs, many people started to fake it so they could get a free airline ride for their animal, their dog. So we worked with the airlines for 3 years, and this past January, the DOT, Department of Transportation, and the airlines adopted the definition of a service dog from the ADA, American with Disabilities Act, which gives us public access into stores, restaurants, and things like that. So they adopted it. And what it says in the American with Disabilities Act is by a service animal, we mean dog. So that means there are no service cats, no service tarantulas, no service pigs, no service animals are dogs, with a few smaller ponies, guide ponies, that I think there's 6 left in the world, and they're grandfathered in.
So I guess, Charlie, I should stop working so hard on on trying to train Bandit, right? Service cat's just not gonna cut it, huh, bud?
I just figured they were really good at picking out lumber because every time I go to my local Home Depot, there's half a dozen dogs in there, and I love animals, but again, they, like you said, the comfort animals were never meant to go grocery shopping with you or to go pick out a 2x4.
And I think it's so unfair to the dog. I mean, can you imagine taking a pet that lives in the home? I mean, and is very good as a comfort animal in the home, and putting him on an airplane where 3/4 of the people are stressed anyway, right, for flying, and expecting that animal to behave. It's not fair. It's really not fair.
Yeah.
So So it is a
So-
quandary, but it is getting better because now only service dogs are allowed. Also, the airline had categorized psychological service dogs, like service dogs for PTSD, in the same category as emotional support animals.
Hmm.
So that was changed with the new laws regarding the Air Carrier Access Act. So now psychiatric service dogs are in the same category as guide dogs and hearing dogs and all those other service dogs. They're trained to task, they're have public access. So we're in the process of working with the airlines because they have the same questions that you do. How do you tell a real service animal from one that's not a real service animal? Very easy. You tell by behavior. A really well-trained service animal will not bark, will not jump on people, will not scratch, will not be sitting on your head, not be sitting on a seat. A well-trained service animal is just that. They are very comfortable going on planes, buses, wherever. And they don't pee in the airport. They don't give birth to puppies in the airport. These are true situations. It's true.
It happened, huh?
Yeah. They don't do that. They're spayed, they're neutered, they're working dogs. They don't do these things. They don't drag you down
Right.
airline terminal so you fall on your face. They don't do these things. And if it is a real well-trained service dog, okay, maybe it's having a bad day. Sometimes it happens. Regardless, that animal shouldn't fly that day. If it's having a bad day in the airport, wait till it gets on the plane. Buckle up.
So Sheila, the recipient of a service dog, do you receive a card or something so that if somebody is kind of second guessing your need for this animal, do you receive a card that you can present that this is?
Yes, you do. Everybody receives a card. However, you can pay $125. A lot of cottage industries sprang up with the emotional support animals flying on airlines and with the invisible dogs for invisible disabilities that are trained to mitigate those disabilities, but the disabilities are invisible. So a lot of cottage industries sprang up and said, if you want to fly with your dog, send in $125. We'll send you a cape and certify your dog as a service dog. Okay. So many people took advantage of that. So it was difficult. It was difficult, but it's better now. It's so much better now because the emotional support animals are not flying. There's always going to be people that will have fraudulent dogs, but if that dog is behaving, I mean, really behaving, you're not going to be able to tell. But if that dog is behaving, it's not going to bite somebody's face off on the plane. So things are better.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and
Baby steps.
And so you spoke about flying primarily, but in terms of day to day, is a service dog allowed pretty much anywhere that the recipient needs to go?
Yes, but ironically, there are a few places that they're not. Although most of them do go with the blessing of, one of them is in houses of worship, synagogues, temples, churches. Because of the separation of church and state, technically, they're not allowed to, they can go in there with permission from the priest or the rabbi. You know what I'm saying?
But all dogs
So
go
that's
to heaven,
one place.
right? I said, but all dogs go to heaven, right?
All dogs go to heaven.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
They'll be there waiting for us. So there's that place. Another place is, you're going to love this one, but they're very accommodating. Most casinos.
Really?
Casinos, because they're not under federal law, correct?
Yeah, true. I mean, a lot of them are on the Indian reservations.
Yes,
and
reservations.
follow different rules. And
But the casino, we had someone who actually worked at a casino with a service dog, and we worked with the casino, and all was well. But technically,
Man, I'm striking out all over the place here tonight. Who's going to carry my money bags?
and the last place, and I'm not sure if this is 100% true, but I do think that in Congress, they don't necessarily allow service dogs in Congress, but I don't know what law that's related
yeah,
to.
there's enough dogs in there now. We
Oh, you really said that. I did not. I don't know if those dogs are going to go to heaven, to tell you the truth.
Oh, we are here with Shelia O'Brien, the chair for Assistance Dogs International North America, the global authority in the assistance dogs industry, and helping place animals with people is basically what we're trying to do, correct?
Correct. Service dogs.
Service dogs with people that need a service dog.
So Sheila, before we wrap up here in just a few minutes, one of the other questions that I think is important to let people know, and especially people with young children. So we see a service dog working, and we're walking down the street, and the first thing we want to do, it's like automatic. Oh, we want to go over and pet the dog, and hey, buddy, how you doing? What is the proper way to handle that?
Believe it or not, the children are sometimes better than the adults. The children say, oh, we can't touch that dog. It's a service dog. But, you can ask and respect what the person says. And it's very interesting, with service dogs for PTSD. One of the goals for those that have PTSD is to integrate back into society, because some of the repercussions of PTSD are that you self-isolate, you don't like to be in crowds, you're hypervigilant. So one of the tasks, and it's an easy task actually, that these service dogs are trained to do, is to shake on command. So if somebody comes up to a veteran with PTSD who has a PTSD service dog, and they say, "Can I pet your dog?" And then the veteran can say no, but you can shake his hand. So that's getting the veteran to interact in a safe way with the public. And it's also a task that the dog is trained to do, because that only helps the veteran. Now, if it's somebody in a wheelchair, it's up to them. Many of them do want to interact with the public. I once had a woman, her name was Marjorie, and she said when she goes out now to the mall, they see the dog first, the person second, and then the wheelchair. So she really enjoyed it, But, we don't advocate you take your service dog with you Christmas shopping during the Christmas rush, because you'll get no shopping done. But it's up to the person, really, how they want to handle it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Now, where do you see the future of this industry going?
Well, I've always been in the future. And I do see that service dogs for PTSD are going to, for a long time, become the service dog. The industry is, we have standards for all the dogs, guide dogs, hearing dogs, but the newest standards were for service dogs for PTSD. And then the next year, we added for military sexual trauma, MST. And right now, the Standards Committee internationally is working on service dogs for civilians with PTSD, which is a little bit different than military PTSD, but it's still PTSD. And they're also looking at other mental health issues. Those haven't been released yet. They're probably going to work on them for a while more and test them out. But so I think service dogs for PTSD are going to be in the lead for a while. But I also see a return of hearing dogs. When I first started in 1978, there was a large pool of people from age maybe 20 to 30 who had been born deaf, and they were young people who had been born deaf because their moms contracted measles while they were pregnant. Okay. And so, that's a good age to get a dog in your 20s and 30s. So many of them came for hearing dogs. But I see now when the veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan came home, many of them suffered moderate to severe hearing loss. And it only gets worse as you get older. So now they're in their 40s, maybe mid 40s, some of them. I think that hearing loss is probably going to kick in very shortly, where it's gone from moderate to severe and maybe very severe. And I think they're still the right age to want a service dog. As you get older, you lose your hearing, but you're less likely to get a service dog as you get older. Because, you say, oh, the kids have gone, the last pet has died, but we'll see. I would like hearing dogs to come back because I was one of the first hearing dog trainers in the world. And I just absolutely love those dogs. I love their personalities. I'll leave you with this because and this is according to Sheila, it's not documented, but the way I see, and I've always seen guide dogs, hearing dogs, and service dogs for physical disabilities, they're on a continuum. And your guide dogs are right in the middle of this continuum. There's no high end, good end, or bad end, but they're just right in the middle of this continuum because they take direction very, very well. They have to, yet they take initiative to stop that blind person from stepping out into the street if a car is coming. So they take initiative. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They listen, they take direction, they take initiative. The service dogs are at this end of the continuum because they take direction, especially those with people who are very physically disabled. Those dogs have to really take direction. They really do what you ask them to do, but they don't take a lot of initiative. Well, the hearing dogs are on this end of the continuum because they're a little bit hyperactive, a little bit type A, and they take pure initiative because they take it upon themselves to let you know if a doorbell rings because you can't hear it if you're deaf or hearing impaired. They take it upon themselves to let you know your grandchild's crying or whatever, or your baby. So they take initiative. So that pretty much, those are the big three, guide dogs. Service dogs for physical disabilities take direction. Guide dogs take direction and have initiative. And hearing dogs are pure initiative. So you can kind of think of the personalities of a dog. I know we talked in the beginning, how do you know what kind of a dog you're going to grow up to be? They tell you. And that's some of the things they tell you.
Well, Sheila, thanks for being here with us this evening. And again, if you can just let people know if they're interested in pursuing a service dog, what the best way to do that would be. That would be great. So I'll let you tell the folks one more time the website they need to visit.
Okay, well, I suggest you visit Assistance Dog International at www.assistancedoginternational.org.
All right. Awesome. Well, it's great information. We hope the folks will reach out and get the help that they need. And I just love animals. I love seeing dogs that are service dogs in action. It's pretty amazing that
It is.
that these animals can be trained. And, like you were saying, I mean, there's a lot of these things that they have instilled in them already. And it's just a matter of the trainer bringing that out in them. And it's pretty amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed this.
All right, you've been listening to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities. Our special guest today, Shelia O'Brien, the chair for Assistance Dogs International North America. Program being brought to you by Century Martial Arts. They're the world leader in martial arts since 1976. Sorry for butchering their name earlier, but they still love us, and we love them.
Absolutely. Hey, looks like we put another one in the books, buddy. Thanks for being back with me and doing this. We're learning as we go.
I'm Charlie Murphy, and that's
JD.
And it's Beyond the Label. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Label. If you would like to be a guest on an upcoming episode, email contact@adaptivemartialarts.org. Beyond the Label is produced by JD Production and presented by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. CenturyMartialArts.com for everything that is martial arts.